Sometimes the emptiness isn't loud. It doesn't come with panic or tears. It comes as silence. You wake up, go through the day, talk to people, do what's expected, and yet something feels switched off. Not sadness, not happiness, just a flat, hollow feeling like life is happening behind glass. From the outside, everything looks fine. Nothing is obviously wrong, and that's what makes it harder to explain. Because how do you describe the absence of something you can't name? How do you talk about a feeling that feels like nothing at all? For some people, the most unsettling part isn't pain. It's the sense that they've lost contact with themselves, and they don't know when it happened. That emptiness often settles in quietly over time. At first, it feels like tiredness, then like boredom. Eventually, it becomes a background state, always there, but hard to point at. People describe it as a hollow space in the chest, a gray filter over everything they do. Moments that should feel meaningful pass by without leaving a mark. They can still laugh, still function, still show up for work, for conversations, for responsibilities. But inside, there's a growing sense of distance. They don't feel deeply sad, yet they don't feel alive either. Joy doesn't land. Pain doesn't fully register. It's as if emotions are present in theory, but not in experience. And the most confusing part is this. When they try to ask themselves what they want, what matters, what feels true, there's no clear answer. Not because nothing matters, but because the connection to those answers has gone quiet. Life continues on autopilot, while the person inside feels strangely absent. Over time, this inner absence starts shaping how a person lives. From the outside, everything can look stable, even successful. Responsibilities are handled. Routines are followed. Conversations happen on cue. But inside, there's a persistent sense of, I'm not really here. Decisions are made not from desire, but from habit or expectation. What seems logical replaces what feels right, because feelings are muted or hard to access. Instead of asking, what do I want? The question quietly becomes, what should I do next? This is where many people begin to confuse emptiness with laziness or lack of ambition. They tell themselves they're ungrateful, that they have no reason to feel this way. But emptiness isn't the absence of a good life. It's the absence of emotional contact with that life. Often, this disconnection didn't start in adulthood. It began much earlier, as a form of protection. When emotions weren't safe to express, when sadness was ignored, anger punished, vulnerability dismissed, the nervous system learned an important lesson. Feeling deeply is dangerous. So it adapted. Instead of fully feeling pain, it turned the volume down on everything. And in doing so, it also turned down joy, curiosity, excitement, and meaning. What once helped someone survive emotionally later becomes the source of their emptiness. As this state continues, many people try to fill the void from the outside. They work more, scroll longer, enter relationships quickly, buy things impulsively, chase intensity just to feel something, anything. These moments might briefly distract from the emptiness, but they rarely touch its core, because the problem isn't a lack of stimulation. It's a lack of connection to feelings, to self, to meaning. And the more someone tries to outrun that feeling, the more exhausting life becomes. Eventually, a quiet realization starts to surface. This isn't sadness. This is something deeper. At this point, emptiness often becomes most noticeable in moments that are supposed to feel meaningful. Achievements don't bring satisfaction. Compliments don't land. Important events pass by with a strange emotional silence. People might say, I should be happy right now, but the feeling never arrives. This creates confusion and shame. If nothing hurts sharply and nothing excites deeply, it's easy to assume something is broken inside. But emptiness isn't a flaw, it's a signal. In many cases, it's closely tied to long-term emotional overload, chronic stress, burnout, living for years in survival mode. When the nervous system is under constant pressure, eventually chooses numbness over collapse. Not because it wants to, but because it has to. That's why people who feel empty are often highly functional. They keep going. They endure. They don't complain much. But endurance without emotional replenishment slowly drains meaning from life. Another layer of emptiness comes from losing contact with personal values. When choices are made based on roles, expectations, or fear, rather than inner truth, life starts to feel like a script written by someone else. Days blend together. Goals feel borrowed. And even rest doesn't restore anything because the exhaustion isn't just physical. In this state, people may fear slowing down. Silence feels uncomfortable. Being alone with oneself brings the emptiness into sharper focus. So distractions multiply. Yet emptiness isn't asking to be filled. It's asking to be understood. Recovery doesn't happen through forcing positivity or finding motivation. It starts much more quietly, with noticing. Noticing when emotions are avoided. Noticing what feels heavy, dull, or distant. Noticing how often needs are ignored in favor of functioning. For many, professional support becomes an important turning point. Not because something is wrong, but because reconnecting with emotions safely often requires guidance. Others begin by gently allowing small experiences back in. Writing honestly without editing. Paying attention to physical sensations. Naming emotions, even when they feel faint or unclear. Meaning doesn't return all at once. It returns in fragments, in moments of genuine rest, in conversations where no role needs to be performed, in choosing one small thing because it feels right, not because it's expected. Emptiness fades not when life becomes louder, but when it becomes more real. Over time, something subtle begins to change. The emptiness doesn't disappear suddenly, but it softens. Moments start to feel slightly more present. Music lingers a little longer. A sentence resonates. A quiet sense of this matters appears, briefly but unmistakably. This is how reconnection usually begins. Not with happiness, but with aliveness. People who once felt empty often discover that the emptiness was never the absence of emotion. It was emotion held too tightly for too long. Pain that was never allowed to move. Needs that were postponed indefinitely. A self that learned to stay quiet to survive. And when those layers are slowly acknowledged, the inner space changes. What once felt like a void becomes room. Room to feel. Room to choose. Room to rebuild meaning on one's own terms. This process isn't linear. Some days feel open. Others feel heavy again. But the difference is awareness. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" the question becomes, "What do I need right now?" And that shift alone restores a sense of agency. The feeling that life is happening with you, not just around you. If you recognize yourself in this state, it doesn't mean you're lost. It means your inner world is asking for attention, not judgment. Emptiness is not the end of feeling. It's the pause before something honest begins. If this resonated, you're not alone in it. And you don't have to rush your way out. Sometimes the most important movement forward starts with finally listening inward.